How's everybody doing today? In our last video we went over a lot of query topics. In this video we're going to cover some more advanced query topics. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working with a lot of the same tables. I'm going to start with the payroll table, and a lot of your homeworks are going to be based on the people table. So same database, the class 102 database, which you have from the download. So one of the more advanced query topics I wanted to talk about is in our math queries. I'm going to go to Create and Query Design, and I want to use the payroll table. If you remember from the last video, we can do math queries where we can click on this totals icon and it gives us a total row. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down level, and I want to use the count function. Now the count function is a really powerful function, but it's one of the most misunderstood functions. The bottom line is you really can't use it with just one column. Typically what you want to do is you want to count a particular group. So I want to count level for level equals 1, meaning I want to count how many level 1 people there are. Now it would seem like you could just do one column and put the equal sign 1 over here, but that doesn't work. So if you're going to use the count command, the one thing you need to remember is 2 columns. So I say level count where level equals 1. That's my group by. I'm going to run it, and it tells me there's 197 level 1 people. If I go back to design and I say, well, how many level 2 people are there? I run it. It says there's 159. Another advanced query topic I want to cover is the use of the between keyword. I'm going to create a new query on the payroll table, and I want to see first name, last name, level, and pay, but I want to see it for people who made between $300 and $500. So in Access there is a keyword called between. It has a special meaning. Access knows what that means. So I'm going to type it for my criteria. And you type it out pretty much like you would say it, between 300 and 500. I go ahead and I run this, and it shows me everybody who made between 300 and 500. So you can use it with pretty much any numeric field. Another advanced query function I'd like to talk about is the like function. What's nice about this is you might not remember somebody's name, but you know it starts with an S. The like function you can use with an asterisk. The asterisk represents a wildcard. In this case, if I say I want to see first name, last name, level, and pay, where last name is like, and then I've got a parenthesis, quote, S asterisk. So I'm saying anyone whose last name starts with the letter S has to start with S, and again the asterisk represents a wild card, so whatever follows it is fine. If I run this one, what I'll see is I get everybody whose last name starts with an S. Another way I can use this command is I can put the asterisk in front of something instead of behind it. Here I'm saying I want to see everyone with a last name like asterisk S-O-N, so it's going to end in S-O-N. Could be Smithson, Sampson, whatever. I'm going to run this one and see what I get. So you notice every last name ends with S-O-N. Wanted to show you one more example of the like command. Here I've got like asterisk S-O-N asterisk. So now it doesn't have to end in S-O-N. The SON can be anywhere in the name. Says the asterisk in front says, I don't care what's in front of it. The asterisk behind says, I don't care what's behind it. As long as it has SON somewhere in the last name, it should show me this. Let's run it, and I get some new ones. Here I've got Bisonet here. This was not in the previous one because the SON appears in the middle of the name. So pretty neat function, the like function. I use it a lot. I've got a large movie database, and a lot of times I use it for movie titles where I don't remember the whole title of the movie, but I know part of it, so I'll say it's like. I'll put it in the part I know, and I usually can get the movie to come up. The next advanced query function I wanted to talk about is calculated fields. You can take any combination of fields that you may have in a table and make some type of calculation out of it. If it's text fields, and you just want to put the text fields next to each other and call it something else, you can do that. For example, instead of having a separate first name and a separate last name, maybe you just want a field called full name. So full name is just a combination of first name and last name. Even though it's all text, we still refer to it as a calculated field. In that case, what you do is, I'm just going to move this over so I have more room here. I'm going to get rid of my first name field, and I'm going to type in the equation, so to speak, that I would need for this. So I call it full name, so I said full name, and then I use a colon. You separate the name of the field from the actual equation by a colon. And then I just put first name plus, I put quote space quote because I do want to make sure I get a space between my first name and my last name. I don't want it mushed together. And then I have my plus last name. Now, Access automatically put this field in square brackets. That's one way that Access identifies this as being a field. So it does that for you. If I run this now, what I get is it calls it full name, but it just puts these two next to each other. You might hear that called concatenating. If you take a text field and put it next to another text field, a lot of times they refer to that as concatenate. You can do calculated fields on numeric fields as well. In the people table, I just brought that up, we have a field called pay and we have a field called bonus. So maybe I would like to do a query that shows total pay, where total pay is just the sum of pay plus bonus. So I could go ahead and do a query for that one. So I'm going to go create, I'm going to go query design, base it on people. Let's say I want to see first name. Well, I'll go last name, first name, and now I want this total pay. So what I'm going to do is, again, I like to move this over, make it a little wider for me. And if I type that in, again, I typed total pay, that's the name of the field, colon is the separator, and I just say pay plus bonus. If I run this, what it does is it shows me last name, first name, and then it takes my pay field, adds it to my bonus field, and shows it to me as total pay. Another advanced query feature is using parameter queries. Now, a parameter query is just an instance where instead of giving a raw number, say for example we want to see where its level equals 3, instead what you do is you give the user a prompt such as enter level, and whatever the user types in, that will be utilized for the run of that query. The nice thing about a parameter query is it's kind of open-ended. You can use it for a lot of different situations. I'm going to go ahead and create query design, and again this is going to be based on payroll. I'm going to say first name, last name, level, and pay. But you notice here, instead of putting a 1 or a 2 or a 3 and running it, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to type enter level. Now this is very important. I have to have square brackets around enter level. They can't be the squiggly brackets, they have to be the square brackets. Now if I run this, what will happen is, instead of just running the query, it stops first and it comes up with this window. This is an input box, and whatever I input in here, let's say I put in a 3, I hit OK, it runs the query with a 3. If I go back to design, I say I want to run this again, I put in a 2, it will run it with a 2. So kind of nice having this ability to leave it a little bit more open-ended. It really doesn't matter what you put in here as the prompt. I mean, I usually put in a prompt that is reflective of what I want the user to enter, but I mean, if you just did something like this, it's still going to work. It just up here, it's kind of nonsense, but if I put in a 3, it still runs the query. So something to think about. I want to look at one more parameter query with you, and this one's going to be a pretty advanced one. What I would like to do is use a parameter query and a between keyword at the same time. I just want to remind you, just use the between word by itself. I've got pay. I want to see people who made between 300 and 500. So I type that in as my criteria. I run it and I get people who made between 300 and 500. Watch this though. If I go back here to design, I could, instead of having the 300 here and the 500 here, I could actually put in 2 different parameters, and then I would have a parameter query. What I did here is I replaced my 300 with enter minimum pay, again square brackets, and I replaced my 500 with enter maximum pay. So now what I can do is I can run this query. It's actually going to have 2 prompts. First one says enter minimum pay, and I don't have to use the 300 and 500 anymore. I can if I want, but I can put in pretty much any numbers I want. I'm going to say 200, and my maximum pay is 400. So it will show me all the people who made between $200 and $400. If I go back to design, I run it again. Maybe I can say, well, I want to see everybody who made between $350 and $500. So I run it, and it shows me all the people who made between $350 and $500. So pretty neat. You really start to feel the power of these things when you can combine them. Like here we're using the between function and we're using parameter queries. So that's when you really start to get into some pretty high-tech stuff. The last couple query types I wanted to talk to you about are action queries. Now action queries are quite different than all our other queries. All the other queries we've done so far do not affect our data. They will display our data in a variety of different ways, but they do not affect the data. Huge difference here. An action query will affect your data. It will change it. So before you use an action query, make sure your database is backed up, double backed up, because I've seen people lose an awful lot of data when they make a mistake doing these. So I'm going to go to create. I'm going to go to query design, just like normal. I'm going to say I want this based on payroll, so I'm going to add. And what I'm going to do next is, these things have always been here, but we haven't really talked about them. I've got update, I've got delete. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a delete query. So I'm going to click on delete, and it changes what I have down here. Okay. What I'm going to say is hours. My criteria is less than 40. So basically what I'm telling it to do is delete all the records for people that worked less than 40 hours. If I go ahead and run this now, what it's going to do, it kind of gives me a warning. It's like, hey, you are about to delete 123 rows from the specified table. Are you sure you want to do it? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and they're gone. They are no longer there. If I go back to my, I'm not going to save this, but if I go back to my payroll table, you might have remembered it used to have 566 records, I believe. Now I've got 443. So it actually deleted these. All right, I want to do just one more action query with you today. It's called an update query. Update queries are great when you have a lot of data that you want to change in a similar fashion. I'm looking at my payroll table. It does, well, now it's got 443 records. I'd like to take all my level 1 people. They currently make $8 per hour. That's their rate. And I'd like to give them all a raise. $9 an hour is what I want to do. So I could go through here by hand and just change all these to 9, but that's very time consuming. So what I'm going to do instead is an update query. So I'm going to go create, query design, my payroll table, and I'm going to click on update. Now what I want to update is the rate. I want to update it to 9. But I got to be careful. I don't want to do this for everyone. I just want to do it for my level 1 people. So, to kind of recap, I'm going to change the rate to 9 for my level 1 people. Go ahead and run this. It says you're about to update 147 rows. I say yes. Go ahead. Now, if I go to my payroll table now and look at my data, it is changed. I see level 1, the person's 9, level 1, the person's 9. So it actually did work. Anyhow, with your action queries, do be incredibly careful with them. They change your data, so make sure your database is backed up. So we covered a lot of advanced functions today. Hopefully this will get you started and well on your way to completing this homework. Hopefully it was helpful. We'll see you next time.